Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 6th Step Up webinar from the Naukri Hiring Suite. My name is Divya Agarwal, and I work in the capacity of a Senior Manager HR here with InfoEdge. Having 14 years of industry experience, I've also been associated with organizations like Oracle, Capgemini, Red Hat, Gartner as a talent acquisition advisor, particularly for C-level professionals. Just to brief a bit about our own organization and this initiative, Naukri Hiring Suite is a bouquet of product and services as most of us are aware of. We have service offerings from Naukri House to meet an organization hiring needs from campus to the corner office. The Step Up initiative, which we have recently kind of undertaken, is from a point of view, it is conceptualized with a vision, actually, a very specific vision of helping the recruiter community emerge very strong in this, particularly in this uncertain times and the current crisis situation. Welcome again to this particular webinar. The theme of this particular webinar, which we will be kind of talking about, is the importance of tech and touch in the talent acquisition world, given the current pandemic situation. We have got two eminent panelists today. Introducing them, we have Mr. Shakun Khanna. I know Shakun from my Oracle days, and he's a very dynamic and a most sought after HR transformation consultant. He currently works as the head of HCM application strategy, handling the JPAC region at Oracle Corporation. Prior to Oracle, Shakun was associated as the country head for Right Management India, and he also headed IBM Smarter Workforce and has led employee engagement at Gallup Consulting. Over the last 2 decades, he has been a consultant to many Fortune 500 organizations, focusing on various areas of HR transformation. He is an inquisitive traveler and an avid reader. Shakun also has kind of co-founded an HR advisory firm. So welcome, Shakun. Next we have is Mr. Sushant Deshmukh. Sushant is a pure-blood TA professional who believes in connecting talent with opportunities. With over 18 years of rich industry experience, he has worked across Fortune 500 organizations such as Vodafone, FIS, and he's currently associated with Principal Global Services as Global Head for Talent Acquisition for India and Philippines particularly. Apart from being a tremendous successful talent acquisition professional, Sushant also enjoys to cook in his free time. Welcome, Sushant.
Thanks, Divya.
All right, so kind of talking about the current webinar, it is basically structured into 3 parts. The first one is basically advancement of technology in the talent acquisition function. The second section will talk about more with respect to maintaining the human connect while hiring. The third section, wherein will be more of a wrap-up kind of a section to kind of take the views of the panelists as to how to balance the tech and touch in the hiring scenario, given that we all are going the virtual way of working. And so diving deep into the webinar and the topics to discuss, we all have probably understood one thing is that in these uncertain times is basically the importance and the power of optimism. So I would request the panelists to kind of just share in a very rapid way one positive experience on the professional front and one positive experience on a professional front which you must have faced particularly during these times. Starting with you, Shakun.
Thank you, Divya. And I think it's a very interesting topic on tech and touch. I really like it. On the positive experiences, I think on the personal side, I realized that how little do we need to really survive and sustain, right? There was the initial phase of this lockdown when we could not get things and everybody was doing with whatever he or she had. And in the process over a period of time, one has realized that a whole lot of stuff that we consume, a whole lot of stuff that we do, for example, is not required. Travel is one such example, you know. We've been not traveling for almost 4 or 5 months now, and there is nothing that has stopped, right? So that is on the personal side. On professional side, I'm really surprised, amazed, and grateful to see how organizations have very quickly evolved their thought processes and have become much more employee centric, much more technology driven, and most importantly, much more empathetic. I did not think that the dog eat dog world of the corporate firms would so react in such a humane manner to this pandemic. So that's my big professional learning.
Sure. Thank you, Shakun. So I hear you say that, of course, I mean, empathy and gratitude probably is what you've developed uh, both on the personal and professional front. Great. How about you, Sushant?
Well, see, this pandemic has, of course, like Sakun said, right? It has taught us about what is more necessary for us. For me on a personal front, it has given me a lot of time to spend with my family. In my 10 years of marriage, I probably wouldn't have spent so much time with my kids and my wife. That's the time that I get to spend in the house. I have kind of developed a lot of new hobbies to start off with. I've started to read a lot, and one great thing that this thing has done is it's kind of made me stop do unnecessary purchases that I've been doing over Amazon or Flipkart or all the sites. So that's one thing that it is taught very properly, that you need to only take what you actually require. What you don't require, you should just leave that and live a very simple life. On the professional front, it's more the organizations have now started to actually unleash the potential that they had from a technology aspects. My organization was earlier not too open to go for work from home, since we have been a financial services organization, and financial tech organizations are a lot audited organizations, so we don't usually have the work from home policy. But this is one policy which we have implemented it, and we implemented it very well. Now we have got 100% of our workforce working out of home. So it's given us that potential to, look at other avenues, to start experimenting and look at what next that we can do.
Sure. Yeah. Great. I mean, yeah, like you also mentioned, InfoEdge also went in for full time, or the entire organization of around 5,000 employees working from home for the first time. And yeah, we've been successful. But yeah, adapting to the new ways of working and to the kind of current situation, probably, like you said, is the key. Fine. Great. Thanks so much for sharing the views. Kind of relating to something which you've already kind of just mentioned, I will deep dive into the first section of the webinar, which is the advancement of technology in hiring. Just to start with, let me take a first poll with the audience present over here to get their opinion on if they have implemented any tech solutions for recruitment, which they were actually not using earlier, but they have implemented in the current time. So we have around 45 seconds for the audience to just answer on this. Repeating the question, if anybody has implemented technical solutions for recruitment, which they weren't using earlier, but given the current situation, they have adapted to. Just holding on for a few seconds to get the poll results. Okay, so here it is. 44% of the audience is saying that, yes, they have adapted to something new, and 56% of the audience is saying that they are yet to adapt something, or they haven't really done that. Fine, thanks so much for participation there. So Shakun and Sushant, we actually, when we gave the registrations, we actually had few questions which had come in for each of the sections. So just kind of bouncing them off with you to get your expert opinion there. So the first one, probably I would kind of come to you, Sushant. A senior TA acquisition professional had basically asked us that they are planning to establish a shared services center for their recruitment, which would basically cater to the mass and volume hiring piece. So they wanted to understand what are some of the key technology adoption that you would recommend that needs to be focused on to have a successful process in place.
See, my understanding for this is that it's not that one size would fit all, right? You have to first understand, what is the need at your end, on what exactly are your needs at that particular moment of time, right? When we were putting up a shared services center, right? We got together and we decided, hey, look, what is it that, we can contribute from our side to a global platform. And we decided, hey, let's put up a global sourcing center to be based out of one of our locations. And that's how we started off. As a first step was, first is pick up the smaller aspects of work that you can, give and, create value out of it. And slowly and steadily then go for a larger share of pie. The same thing can be done on other HR, departments also. We've then migrated the payroll, we've then migrated the, the HR grievances piece also across. So, but we started off with a very simple step of, putting up a global sourcing hub for languages that we were comfortable about. So we have also a larger share of business which happens in the European nations. So that we said, let's go and focus more on English speaking nations. So we, got into Southeast Asia, we got into US, we got a lot of work outsourced from ANZ region. So that's how we started off with a global, sourcing hub. And that's what I would recommend, that, you start with small, then you look what's working, what's not working, because there would be regional dynamics which would be in play. So that's something that everybody has to individually look at.
Sure. So what I hear you say is basically that you established a global sourcing hub, wherein you had kind of got people from different locations, so probably catering to different locations of your, basically where your clients are based, and that probably helped you in having a centralized approach. Okay. So a follow-up question which I just have from a live question and answer session, Sushant. Somebody has asked me that, what if, people are basically used to conducting walk-ins, wherein, people will come in physically in large numbers, wherein we cater to their, understand their resume, there is a lot of physical connect over there. But how do you think we should kind of cater to it now?
See, now, since the norm has changed, right? What we can do is the resume we have, what we are doing at Principal is we've moved to a complete video interviewing tool, right from your first level of screening, which usually used to happen over the phone, and then used to shortlist and screen the candidate. Now we are using, a testing tool which, helps us understand whether the candidate is good on the technical aspects or the software aspects. And then, we have a video interviewing done across for those candidates. So video interviewing is one tool that we use. In fact, we also do our walk-in drives through our video interviewing now. Of course, it consumes a lot of time than what it earlier used to. So earlier we used to cater to around 50 people in a day. Now we've limited it, restricted to around 15 people a day. We have increased our panel size. From earlier we used to have 10 panelists. Now we've moved ahead and got 30 odd panelists on board to do those interviews. So you will have to increase the scale when you are moving to a virtual platform.
Sure. So understood. So what I hear you say is basically that it's basically a collaborative approach from the talent acquisition professionals as well as from the business, wherein they came together, understood the need of the hour and actioned accordingly, contributing increased bandwidth from the business as well. And you did mention something about video interviews. Are you also going in for something which is probably, a lot of it was being talked about, something called as video job descriptions, wherein the recruiter is coming face to face or having a recording done, and they are kind of talking about the role, the organization, because the candidates are not really kind of able to come to the office and see the office building or, understand the basic culture or the amenities that the office has now.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Fine. Thanks so much, Sushant. Coming to you, Shakun, for my next question. What are some of the key parameters that probably you would advise the talent acquisition leaders to adapt when it comes to kind of inculcating a new SaaS-based ATS?
So I think there are 4 or 5 very important things specifically with the change in circumstances and the way we are working. First of all, I think you need to have a platform that can engage the candidate in minimum effort possible. Gone are those days when candidates would stay and come in an office or a walk-in drive, as we were discussing, and engage and do every process. The process has to be very, very simple. There are ATS where you will have to do multiple things at multiple times, right? For example, if I put in my name as an applicant today, that should be done, right? It should not say, if I am going to the next level, it should ask me to put in the details again and so on and so forth. So that's very important.
Resume parsing probably is what you are meaning over here, that, that it should be automatically parsed.
Not just resume parsing, that's a very primitive technology, but I would say more deeper integrations to with things like LinkedIn, for example. If I could just apply through LinkedIn and then the whole process is taken care of. So that's one piece. The second piece is, where do you get those candidates? So all this entire piece around hybrid digital marketing of jobs is very, very critical and important now. So can the system track and work very, very seamlessly across various platforms? That is one. The third piece, I think, which will be important is around this whole gig economy. And I was looking at these questions somebody did ask me. Gigs will continue to play an important role. In fact, it is now estimated that about 60% of the workforce in about next 2 years will get converted into some form of gigs. Not only that, people who are already into full-time employment would now start looking at gig opportunities, because we are not traveling, we don't have commute time. So people, in fact, we did a research where we found out that almost 74% of the people now want to have multiple sources of income. So how do you create those gig opportunities and provide them to your internal employees? And also at the same time, how do you get more talent coming in from the gig world would be very important. Currently, if you look at gig marketplace is different. The ATS is very, very different. So now is the time when these are two coming together. Oracle, for example, already has a product where internal and external gig economies could be very, very strongly. So relook at your entire gig strategy and the enabler there. Lastly, I think the important piece would be, how do you select the candidates? So therefore, having hybrid technologies built in, like Sushant mentioned, they've started using video interviewing, some kind of assessments. Not only that, but knowing that you are talking to the right person and having the genuine candidate there. Again, one of the comments was that, how do we tackle this problem of increasing fake candidates? That's the third piece. There also hybrid technologies are today available to be able to track that, not only from a background verification perspective, but also high-end biometric that can enable that. So I think those are the 4 or 5 things that people should look at when looking for a new ATS.
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Shakun, for that. Anything else probably that both of you would like to highlight, which you have seen in the recent experience that organizations are kind of thinking towards when we are moving towards the virtual way of working? So particularly with respect to hiring, anything that you guys would like to highlight around that? Shakun?
I think the way we assess candidates has to be completely revamped and relooked at. Gone are those days when certain personal traits or certain typecasts were critical or important. Because remember, in earlier times, you were getting everybody on at a common location, and the culture, and you mentioned the whole feel of office, and that fitment was important. Today, you want to have people who are far more independent, far more responsible, and can deal with a whole lot of ambiguity. The process is not that important. The delivery is going to be very, very important. So some of the paradigms that we carry from the past on the way we assess candidates has to completely change. And I think it's not just about technology. It's the whole competency framework. It's the quality traits that we seek into individuals that organizations must revisit.
Sure, definitely. Just to add to that point, Shakun, recently when I was actually adapting for an assessment framework here, hiring for senior sales leaders, so what I have really devised is basically a competency assessment framework wherein we used to map the proficiency level versus the skill set that is required in an individual. So it should not be like a good to have or a must to have or a kind of maybe or something like that, or just the candidate is not selected, but basically plotting on the graph where does he fall with respect to several attributes, like you rightly mentioned, on the softer side of it. How adaptive is he, in some uncertain situations? How agile he is. So great point.
And Divya, I think some of the models are very complex. Now is the time when you should look at just 1 or 2 key competencies and move on, right? Network banane ka abhi time bhi nahi hai aur zarurat bhi nahi hai. Get the right thing, get the work done, move on.
Great. Thanks so much. That's a great input. Okay, Sushant, how about you? What is your thought on
And
it?
I agree to what Shakun has said, that we need to revamp our entire selection process in terms of how are we assessing the candidates, right from the resume to the interviewing skills to the competency mapping. Everything needs to reassess. We need to only look at what is more essential for the business, what is more required for the person to be successful on the job, and that's what we have to pick up in our way forward. The world is going to be more ambiguous as we move forward. Like Shakun said, 60% of the workforce is going to be more agile going forward, and that's going to be the norm now. Now everybody
Yeah,
has looked into that potential. I am not seeing things moving very smoothly till at least December. So 2020 is absolutely gone for a lot of organizations. So they will have to probably look into more about how is it that we can make our processes more robust and understanding those candidates. Somebody put across for fake candidates. It's very difficult, I agree, from a virtual standpoint to assess a candidate whether the candidate is fake or not. But you can use tools
yeah.
which are now available in the market to actually look at whether you are having the right candidate or not.
So,
I would put it this way, that we need to actually now focus on what is actually needed, rather than look at the holistic picture about if the candidate is
hmm,
culturally fit, organization fit, motivational fit. So instead of that, you just need to pick up what is more important. Is motivational fit and organizational fit important? Then we'll have to more look into that, because now the cultures are going to be more diverse if it's going to be all
yeah,
working online and working from home kind of.
agreed. Sure. Thanks so much for that. So what I hear both of you say is that probably, we need to restrict to a very specific competency-based assessment, given the current situation, and should not be very complicated, but, very specific to the requirement that we have. Sure. Thanks so much for the kind of inputs around that. Moving on to our second section, which is basically to maintain or the importance of human connect in the current scenario while we are hiring people. So starting with the first poll again over here, this is for the audience. How comfortable are your hiring managers to hire a new candidate while virtual hiring? So again, I'll repeat the question. Wanted to check on the comfort level of your hiring managers while they're hiring the new candidates through virtual hiring modes. So you can choose from extremely comfortable, not comfortable, extremely uncomfortable. You can choose one of the options. Just waiting for a few seconds for the answers to pop up here. Okay. So over here, we say that 48% of the audience is saying that they are somewhat comfortable. 27% is saying that they are extremely comfortable. And a minimal level is basically saying that it's extremely uncomfortable. So I think the majority of the poll stands towards somewhat comfortable. Probably that's a fair thing as well, because we're still adapting to the new ways. We are still quite uncertain as to how things will shape up in the near future. So again, Shakun and Sushant, we actually had some questions during our registration process, and also some live questions that we have here on this section. So Shakun, I would like to come to you first on this one. So the question that we received was, how do you establish trust between stakeholders, that is clients and candidates, when they aren't comfortable to hire or join without an in-person meeting? So it's basically through virtual mode of hiring. How do you establish that trust factor?
Yeah, I think it is very difficult, and somewhere or the other, we'll have to find a way of having that, sorry, that personal connect. But however, first of all, openness and transparency will go a long way. Gone are those days when candidates would wait for certain information and be comfortable if you're not telling certain things. So that I think is very important. Second
Sure.
thing is around time to response. Again, these are the days when you have to very quickly respond, not only to the candidates, but even to your employees, so relook at
Hmm.
your turnaround times and query times and so on and so forth. The third would be how many interactions can you create, even though it is virtual interaction, right? So probably those walk-ins could become dial-ins now. Can you set up an online help desk where any candidate just can dial in or walk in in the virtual world and look at that? Lastly, as soon as possible, the face, name, and the voice of the hiring manager or the reporting manager should be given. And I understand for some cases it takes a while before there is some kind of an interaction between the candidate and the hiring manager, bulk hire cases. That I think needs to be accelerated so that as soon as possible those cohesive groups can get created. Lastly, I think technology can play a very important role. You can deploy very intelligent bots and other applications that can keep the candidates engaged and also, shorten this whole time. Because we just need a response, right? And in today's world, it doesn't matter if it is coming from a human or a bot. So having that kind of intelligent strategy around the right use of technology will also go a long way to enhance trust and comfort with the candidates.
Sure. Understood. So what I hear you say, Shakun, is that basically trust, openness, and promptness in the response, both from the stakeholder standpoint or the interviewer standpoint and the recruiter standpoint, is utmost important. And like you said, technology, again, having some help desks, virtual help desks, which is set up, or maybe chatbots, which probably will be kind of readily available to answer to the queries of the candidates. Thanks so much for that. Sushant, how about your opinion on that?
Well, see, this the trust between the candidate and the hiring manager, right, has to be established right when the interviewing stage starts off. Like whether the candidate is selected or not selected, it's a secondary aspect, right? First is, we Indians, we prefer to, meet in person, interact in person, and there's a lot of human touch that we kind of require. But the way forward is not going to be that anymore. We will now have to move towards adapting to new styles and adapting to new technologies that are available. So it absolutely makes it more essential for the hiring managers as well as the candidate to have a trust between themselves. Of course, there is a lot of information that is available over the internet about the organization that the candidate would want to go to. There is a lot of information that is also available about the candidate, in terms of his testing abilities. You've already tested the candidate. You've already, have his profile. You've seen what he's done. It's all mentioned over there. Now it's only about building that trust up from the first conversation that you go ahead with. So that trust gets established over there, and then it all depends on how are you going to keep your candidate engaged post the offer letter is done. And it plays a very vital role. How is your organization information been percolated? How is the candidate responding back to that information that he or she is receiving? And like Shakun mentioned, there are a lot of chatbots that you can put across. There are help desks that you can arrange. There are virtual coffee sessions that you can arrange between the hiring managers or between the team that person is going to be aligned to. So it also helps in kind of building that confidence in the candidate as well as the hiring manager about the candidate. So I believe it starts from the time the first interaction happens till the person is not got on board.
Great. Fine. So some great points which Sushant actually had for all of us is basically emphasizing on the candidate engagement part, which is extremely, extremely important, having not met the candidate physically, and, it's an important move for his career to move from one organization to other. So it's extremely important to build that trust. And like he rightly said, trust building starts right from the word go. Thank you, Sushant, for your views on that. We have another question, which probably I'll come to you, Sushant, first on that. How do we ensure that the incumbent is well versed with our culture? Because, like I said, these people are not, really coming to our office, understanding, getting the look and feel of the office, having, feeling those vibrations of the people around in the office. It's just having maybe met with 1 or 2, 3 people, during the interview process, that too on a virtual basis. So how do you think that we can kind of have that smooth transition or a positive insight given to the candidate with respect to our culture, organization culture for that matter? Yeah.
It's a very nice question, and this is one question which I believe all organizations have, is how do we still maintain our organization culture, right? With so many people at diverse locations, and to sum it all up, right? That, like I said, your engagement starts immediately after the offer is kind of given to the candidates. Now there might be people with a shorter notice period, some would be with a longer notice periods. So it all depends on how are you kind of passing on the information across. What we've done at our organization is that we've created a buddy for
Okay.
every new employee that joins in. There is a buddy who is assigned for that individual once he gets onboarded. Before that, the recruitment team kind of interacts. We make him a part of a lot of our forums that we are so that he gets information about the organization. He gets the information about what the overall organization is all about. And then there is a buddy which kind of handholds the person virtually for all his needs, right from his system allocation to introducing him along his peers and among the leaders. There is an interaction forum which we keep with all our new joiners within the organization for the first 30 days. The orientation is now becoming more and more important.
Yeah, it is. Fine. So buddy assignment, probably a dedicated resource, for basically, kind of hand holding or, kind of giving that comfort to a new joinee is what you probably I hear you say. Shakun, any thoughts that you have?
No, I think Sushant has covered it pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Thanks. Moving on to the next question that I had for this section is basically, how do you deal with the change management at the time of new technology implementation? So, Shakun, I did read a couple of your articles wherein you have articulated this very well. How do we really manage the emotional turmoil while the new technology is being implemented? So definitely, out of curiosity, I'll come to you first.
I mean, the world is changing any which ways. I think given the current situation, the right terminology should be, how should we manage ourselves in the wake of the change, right? Rather than trying to manage the change. So a couple of things have changed. First of all, as I said, fundamental transparency and openness has to increase.
Yeah.
Role of technology now suddenly will become very, very important. Some of the things that were optional earlier are not a choice anymore. Sushant alluded to the fact that how their own organization was, kind of double-minded on flexi working, but now there is no choice around it. So certain things are automatically happening. Certain other things are not. One of the things that traditionally we used to say in change management is that let it unfold slowly and quietly. Now the right thing would be to tell them what might happen even maybe 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, and so on and so forth. So because, right now there is so much of ambiguity, people are looking for direction. So having a little view of the visibility is important. The second thing is accepting that we don't know. Earlier on, again, it was very difficult and also not also advisable for the senior leaders to come and say, I don't know, I don't have the answer. Luckily or ironically now, it's perfectly fine. Our prime ministers and the biggest leaders in the world don't know. The doctors don't know the answer. We don't know, right? And that's the reality. So that hypocrisy that we had created, that we know we are in control, is all gone. And the best way to manage change is to say, we don't know, let's explore, we'll figure it out. And once that kind of openness, transparency, and honesty comes in the system, then the change will automatically get managed. Because now you are not setting expectations of the people, you are telling them to expect something that you don't know. And that automatically flows with the change.
Sure, understood. So I hear you say about the importance of kind of openness and transparency, and to live with some bit of uncertainty, like you rightly mentioned about some practical cases that, we really need to accept the practicality and live with that uncertainty. Understood. Again, Shakun, kind of referring to one of your other management talks, wherein I really heard a great point, wherein you mentioned that the best way to manage change is basically to retain something which is already there. just because we want a technology advancement doesn't mean that we just go haywire and implement some new technologies and there is a lot of turmoil caused unnecessarily. So what are your thoughts around that?
See, these are the days when everybody is jumping onto the new age technologies.
Yeah.
Because suddenly an external environment and trigger has created a scenario where we believe that because we don't have the technology, therefore we need to embrace the technology. That doesn't mean that everything that you had has to be left out. So it's like right now, it's not about jumping onto the other board, but actually stepping to the other board while you are still holding the older board. Certain things that can be changed. So 3-4 important things are, first of all, anything that can be digitized should be digitized right away, right? So let's not think too much about should we do it, is it must have. So anything, because world has now become digital first, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
This morning my son wanted me to buy a pack of his guitar strings. He's been telling me for many days, and these days I'm always busy, so I was not really giving attention to him. He went online, he put it on the cart, he picked up the link from there, and he actually sent me an email on my official ID saying that, hey, I've kind of done everything, just go and pay and get this done. I could do it in a moment because I could do it on my screen. So that's what is happening in our family. So therefore, organizations have to digitize everything that can be digitized. Now, when you are digitizing, it's like a scenario where you don't have time to pick up a lot of baggage. This is not the time when you will redesign systems. So if you are digitizing something, pick up the best practice of the product and let your process change. Because see, your process is any which way is changing because of the external factor. Don't create another layer of complication that we will make technology work according to us. You are changing habit, you are changing your process, might as well adopt the best that the technology is offering and run. So 2 important pieces are there.
Sure. Thanks. Very interesting, Shakun. Thanks for sharing that. All right. How about Sushant? What is your thought around it?
Well, Shakun has hit the nail on the head. We shouldn't look at, experimenting too much, because this is not the time to experiment. We need to look at, what is it that is bare necessary for us to, to digitize, to, look at things which can be, quickly turned around. Because the entire change is not very easy from an organization perspective. Even though everybody says that change is the only constant, but that is the most difficult thing for any individual to do, right? You are so used to do a certain thing in a certain way, right? If I tell all of a sudden you've been writing with your right hand, I tell you, from tomorrow you'll have to start writing with your left hand. It's going to be very difficult for people to adapt. And if you put too many technologies inside into them and tell them, hey, look, you need to learn this also, you need to learn that also, and then this is also coming up. So it becomes an overwhelming thing for any individual. So it's better that you pick up what is there necessary, what you think you can, deliver on a faster track. And then, look at, once you've done one implementation, give it some amount of time to, for people to digest it. And then you move on to the next. So it's not that, you take everything all together and let's, do change at one go, we'll change the color of the house at one go. That doesn't happen. You have to give it time. You need to give a thought around it and do what is bare minimum necessary.
Sure. Agreed. Thanks so much, Sushant, on that. What I hear you say again is that, kind of adapting to something which is really, really necessary and go take baby steps, so that it is more adaptive and more acceptable to the audience. Agreed. Okay. And another question which I'm just getting here in the live session is basically a TA head is asking me, how do we really cater to the hiring or kind of getting onboarded a particular senior level? Like, for example, if I have to hire a chief business officer for one of the verticals here at InfoEdge, just taking a hypothetical example. So any specific criteria that probably you would like to highlight when we're specifically dealing with senior C-level folks? Sushant?
See, if I have to onboard a C-level candidate, right, I would do exactly, what I said in the earlier time, that, first is what I would have a constant flow of communication being established with the individual, right? Send him newsletters about the organization, send him information about the business that he's going to probably cater to, give him insights about his team. I would have, before he joins in, I will have his key team members, interact with him, meet up with him over
Right.
a virtual call. And once he's onboarded, right, I will have my peers within the human resources team also kind of, walk him through the organization, introduce him across to other members, although this is all going to happen virtually across. And then, I would have my, head of probably the business partner who's going to partner with him along the business lines, be a buddy for that individual, so that, he is rightly inducted into the organization, he gets the right information that is required, and anything which is not required gets automatically filtered out.
Yeah, great. All right, so great point there, Sushant, wherein you mentioned that probably beforehand here only, you'll acquaint the person maybe 1 or 2, 3 days before the onboarding to meet his team members so that, in case there is, there's a connect which is established, basically, that's the idea. Great, fine. Shakun, any thoughts from your side?
We've had the first-hand experience of this at Oracle. During the pandemic, a new head of Japan and Asia Pacific was hired.
Okay.
And it's interesting because this person lives in New York. And
okay.
ideally, when the CEO is joining, you would come to the office. It has not happened.
Yeah.
And New York and Asia is different time zone. So 3 things. 1, there is a lot of communication he has to do, and he is doing. Unfortunately, he has to work in the night shift for him, right? Because he's stuck in New York and there's no way he can come till travel starts. And thirdly, I think the leader himself or herself will have to take that initiative to reach out to multiple people, because you are in the senior position. So now it's the initiative that you will take. Earlier days, it was very different. Somebody would organize, there would be a structured thing. So I think leadership plays a very important role, and leaders will have to think and reach out. How do they connect? In the first few days, he had 100 one-on-one meetings on Zoom overnight, right?
Oh, okay, that's some number.
That's the kind of effort he had to put in, which would not necessarily be required if he would have, an office where everybody would come in, they would have together, and things was, taken care of. So I think leaders' role and effort has become much more critical now at senior levels.
Yeah, great. No, I agree that, leadership probably is something, that they're doing things in a little different way. Like you said, 100 meetings in a day is coming, kind of some number there probably. So, all right, great. Anything again? Again,
just to clarify, because it's on record, it's not 100 meetings in a day in the first days, right? 100 meetings in a day.
Oh, sorry. All right, thanks.
Because if it is 100 meetings a day,
that's why I was wondering.
It's not a meeting, right? He'll not even remember the name. So first couple of days, we did 100 one-on-one meetings.
Sure, understood. Thanks for that, Shakun. Okay, again, a live question that I have here. Part of it that we've already discussed, with Sushant, with you, with respect to the cultural aspect of hiring. So someone is asking me, that how about particularly we have to take into account the check on the cultural fitment when we are hiring a leader, because that's super important, because that is what will be cascaded down in the team during the course. So any specific inputs, any thoughts around that, Sushant?
There are a lot of tools which are available now, which will help you assess the competency, and one of the most important competency that I feel for a senior leader is the cultural fit within the organization. Because I have seen a lot of people who have joined the organization who have not been culturally fit for the organization, and then it's become a little difficult for the organization as well as for that individual to survive within the company. So the person needs to be culturally fit. So what you need to assess from that individual is how is he going to live the values of your organization? So you'll have to check whether if one of your organization value is giving back to the community, or if your value is client first. So you need to gauge what are his thoughts around those particular values that the organization has imbibed in its DNA, and see how the responses are. And basis that, you will be able to assess whether the person is suitable for the organization or not suitable for the organization.
Yeah, agreed. Sure. Shakun, you would like to share any thoughts around that, specific thoughts?
So again, I would suggest that wait a while before reaching that conclusion, because as Sushant very rightly said, that there are a lot of tools available. Of course, they'll continue to be. However, the culture of the organization will evolve and change. And
Hmm.
currently, we are in a state we don't even know what is the right fit and what is not. Of
Yeah,
course, the fundamental values. So I would just articulate it rather than saying, is it culture fit or not? We should look at value alignment more than the culture fit in the current terms. Of course, using the
sure.
methodologies that Sushant has said.
Great. That's a great point, Shakun. So what I understand from you is that basically understanding the core values of the person possesses so that, he can be really adaptive in the current situation and also in the current culture of the organization. Sure. Great point. Yeah. Thanks. So moving slightly towards the closure of this webinar, the third part that probably I had highlighted earlier was, balancing out the two aspects, the advancement of technology and also the sensitivity, or rather the increased sensitivity about the human connect while hiring. So maybe some takeaways from this webinar that you would like to really highlight for the audience, or any thoughts that you would like to share as to how do we take a balancing approach? Shakut?
See, we should learn from our personal lives. We have leveraged technology to fill for that gap in personal touch, whether it is now people getting married, or families bonding with each other, or even celebrating. We celebrated a cousin's birthday on a Zoom call like this. So I think organizations will have to start doing that. It will be a while before that personal touch connects comes back.
Hmm.
In fact, almost 50% of the Fortune 500 CEOs say that 90% of their workforce will never return back to the normal workplace that used to be there. So obviously, you are not able to do that, and you will not be able to do that.
Hmm.
There will be certainly a big element of induction and getting attuned to the organization that will miss. In the
Yeah.
longer run, organizations will have to relook at their office strategy. There are a lot of futuristic organizations that are now saying, can offices change their role? So earlier,
Okay.
offices were places where we used to deliver work. Now, in the new age, offices will become places of social interaction. So I'm still working from home, but once in a while, I go to that office so that I can have that interaction with it.
Hmm.
And a lot of large organizations are now looking at. So can you create a hub, which is not really an office, but
Hmm.
something that creates that kind of bonding, that kind of culture? And in this whole process, a new culture of the organization will evolve.
True. Agreed. Sure. Sushant, how about your thoughts on the balancing aspect of this?
See, this the current situation, right, where what we
Hmm.
are into, that we've gone into more virtual world rather than being in the touch. And I agree, that it's going to be quite some time to get that older normal back. But this is going to be the new normal. This is how workspaces are going to be functioning. you
Hmm.
know we will have roughly around 20 to 30% of our workforce, even
Hmm.
after all the situation ends, continue to work out of office, and or probably work from home. so
Hmm.
so the office strategy also needs to be changed, depending on how is going to be your new normal going to look like. So we need to do or understand what is bare minimum required for us to adapt and work in this kind of situation, and move along, till you don't find your footing within the entire space. Right now, it's a lot ambiguous environment, right? Give it another 2 3 months, when once this becomes the new normal, people will find out means and ways to socialize through virtually. People will find out new means to induct and onboard talent. So we just need some amount of time to just get used to the new normal that we are currently into. But yeah,
Hmm.
probably 2021 onwards, we would all be so used to, these things. We would have, the human touch, like Shakun said, right? Once in a while, come down to the office, interact with your peers, meet,
Yeah.
see how the space is, earlier we used to probably take a holiday off and sit at home just because I don't want to do anything. Right now, we'll probably do the reverse way, right? We've been sitting and working at home. Why don't I just go back to the office for one day and see how it actually feels to be back at work? So that's good.
We should start learn from the ladies and do kitty parties in office.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a great idea.
That's the idea for the day, I think. Let's have kitty party.
Yeah, that's the key takeaway from Shakun, probably, is what I can say.
Correct. So that's how we will have to, kind of look at it, be innovative in our approach, but, be in mind that any change that happens, it needs time, and you need to give that time to people.
Yeah, agreed. Sure. So thanks so much for the three kind of sharing your inputs on the three basic sections that I had. Since we're just coming to a closure of this webinar, I would like, to kind of just help us with some two takeaways, apart from whatever we've discussed just now, some two takeaways for our audience, which you would like to kind of recommend, suggest, or share your experience given the current situation. So Shakun, apart from the highlight that you mentioned, anything else that probably you would like to have?
No, I'm still fascinated with the idea of kitty parties. So I would very strongly recommend that, find out a way to do that. Bring your own lunch or whatever it is. But on a serious note, I think from a recruitment perspective, it is a very ambiguous and a very difficult market. So your shopping list has to become much more smaller. Only look for things that are must have, important, and very quickly do that. Because remember, there is a lot of ambiguity out there, and at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities. Sectors that are hiring big time. So therefore, the war for talent is not going to be any simpler, right? So remove the complexity. I borrow from Sushant. A while ago, he said, this is not the time for experimentation. And lastly, I think you should be very open to let go of your older habits, older processes, older systems, simply because they don't work anymore. So one should be very, very willing and open. There is a very big mindset, and more so in the recruitment fraternity, that this will not work for our organization.
Yeah.
Mindset needs to change. How can we make this work? Because it's not a buyer's market anymore, it's a seller's market. So those are the two important advices from us.
Sure.
Thanks, Shakun. Sushant?
Well, see, the war on talent is not going to end, with this. It's going to be more intense going forward, right? You would have earlier, you could do probably 100 or 150 interviews in a day, which will now get very limited to probably 25 to 30 interviews per day. Even if you increase the panel, right? You're not going to have the entire organization doing the interviews. So you need to, A, adapt to that change that is happening. B, you will have to be, more smart. You just cannot do the things that you were doing earlier. A lot of recruiters, I saw a question around, bulk recruitment, right? They just, pick up the phone and call in and line up the candidates for a walk-in interview. We now would have to, be more smart. We will have to, learn and, sharpen our saw in such a manner that, we know that we are tapping the right talent. So change and adaptability to change is something that we will have to look ahead going into the near future.
Sure. Thanks so much. So like we come to an end to this webinar, just to summarize few key points that both of you have mentioned, which are right on my mind, is basically kind of change is the key. You have to really let go of the older habits, and adaptability is the next key, wherein you have to adapt to the new way of working, to the new technologies for that matter, and be a little more flexible. And like Shakun repeatedly mentioned, openness and trust is the key currently, to survive in the current market scenario. And Sushant really mentioned with respect to his experience, on having more of video interviews, virtual JDs, or kind of collaboration with the stakeholders and the candidates to a very large extent. Having chatbots or maybe assigning a buddy for candidate engagement is probably the key. So these are some of the basic points that we basically discussed in this webinar of the importance of both technology yet maintaining the human connect with the candidate and the stakeholder. So thanks so much both of you for kind of sparing time and being a part of this session. It was a great learning for us, and I'm getting some huge responses from the audience already. And I would like to thank the audience as well to be a part of this, and look forward for some more kind of webinars over here, which is going to happen in every fortnight from Naukri.com. Thank you so much again, everybody.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Divya.
Thank you
Sakun.
so much.
And thank you all.